Whoa, buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the interwebs at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and we are ready to go. Oh, man. I had a invigorating weekend. Invigorating, I think, is the word that I'm looking for here. Just, kind of, I would say it was restive, but I was definitely running the entire weekend. But it was good, man. It was good. It was good. And we're ready to go. Here in this hour one of the big radio broadcast. Now, I announced it last week. We thought we were going to have Nancy Dahlstrom on, but unfortunately, apparently she's flying this morning or something, so that fell apart. So it's just going to be you and me here in the first hour of the program, and we're going to have some discussions about Alaska's willful blindness. Willful blindness. That's what's going on there. And Greg, I'm sorry I didn't swing into Sterling. I was running hard this weekend. Let's just put it that way. By the time I got through Soldotna yesterday, all I could see was home. That's all I could see was home last night. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about Alaska's willful blindness here in hour one. And a couple different stories that kind of highlight that. And then we're going to, we'll just chat about a couple of the other headlines that are out there, some of the things that are happening. In hour two today, we'll be joined by Nick Begich, who, of course, is a candidate for US Congress. And we'll talk with Nick about his campaign, the candidacy, and all the big stories that are coming out regarding this race. And I think there's a little bit of angst going on, and we might talk a little bit about that as well. So we're hoping to have Nancy Dahlstrom, Nick's opponent, on the program, hopefully on Wednesday. I'll be sending out that email here shortly. And so hopefully we'll have her on Wednesday, and we could talk about this, because there's been some stories that have come out that are not, they just don't put her in a great light. Let's put it that way. Let's just put it that way. It's not great. And so we will be, I'm sure, being able to ask her questions about that, and also, of course, about her responsibility as the head of the Division of Elections, and where's the report, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these questions that we've been asking ourselves here on the program for the last few months. And so hopefully on Wednesday, we'll have that question answered. Now, that won't really help us because tomorrow is the primary. Now, if you've been early voting and if you got it all done, then yeah, I'm glad you went out there and got it done early. But unfortunately, I would love to have had her on the program prior to the primary, but here we sit. here we sit, and we'll figure it out where we go along from here. All right. Let's continue on here and jump into the rest of this morning, talking about a few of the news stories that are going on around the country and around the state, and see what happens. There's a few interesting things that have gone on, including, I guess I should put the first word out right now. Again, a congratulations. It seems like I've been talking about Kristen Faulkner here quite a bit lately. Of course, the two-time Olympic gold medal Olympian. She has now crossed the finish line as the top American on the Tour de France Femmes, which is the female version of the Tour de France. And but she was 38th in the final standing, but that was the best American rider in the race this year. So she continues to shine in her way, and so we congratulate her. What an exciting time! And so that was just that kind of bit of good news that you needed. The good news here as we kick things off and as we go along. One of the other things, it was funny. I was in Homer again over the weekend and talking to a lot of people about a variety of things. But what I found what was really interesting was that there seemed to be several times over the weekend, there was a common thread talking about the situation with electricity in Homer. And that there has been a lot of there's been a lot of angst about some of the situations going on down there. Most importantly, the cost of electricity in Homer, which is apparently pretty significant compared to other parts of the state. Now, not rural Alaska, but on the road system. And there were some other questions about whether or not capital credits were being paid out, and there was a question about the way that they're doing their pay. They're apparently the CEO of, or I guess president, CEO, the chief cook and bottle washer over there at HEA, makes a good paycheck. Something I haven't checked this out, but somebody was quoting to me this weekend that this guy apparently is making somewhere approaching $400,000 a year as the CEO or president of the cooperative. To which I was like, "What? What?" That's a pretty healthy check. Now I don't know what average. I don't know what average CFOs or CEOs of these different electric utilities make, but that just seemed like a little excessive to me for what is essentially a small utility. But there was a lot of questions. I probably talked to literally over the course of 2.5-3 days, a half a dozen people who brought it up in conversation, just in general about living conditions in Homer and other things. And it really makes me, maybe it's something we need to dive into. Maybe it's something we need to get a little bit further into and start asking some questions. Cause I'd be the first to admit that I'm mostly ignorant about that situation. And, I would like to know more. I would like to know more. I have questions. I have questions for sure. But they're in the process of now setting up a new deal for a huge jump in solar power production in Alaska. It's a new solar farm that they have just now inked a deal that opens the door for the construction of this thing. The solar farm, once it's up and running, according to Alex DeMarban over at the ADN, will also be a small step toward reducing the need in South Central for Cook Inlet gas, which, of course, we all know is potentially going to start running short early, as early as maybe next year. Definitely the year after, apparently. The new solar farm will be built near Puppy Dog Lake in Nikiski on the Kenai, and it will have a 45 megawatt capacity, which the largest solar farm up until now has been the one that they just launched in Houston this year. That is 8.5. So this will be 5 times as large as the one out there in as far as actual wattage, 5 times as large as the one out there. And it will be apparently 60,000 solar panels across 300 acres of land. So HEA's board unanimously agreed this week to buy the solar farm's power, and that sets the stage for the project to seek approval from the RCA, the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. And, this is that big push for renewables in many, and of all the things that seem to make more sense, it seems like the solar capacity or solar renewables are at least a little bit more consistent than the wind renewables, because you can never predict when the wind's going to blow, and you can never predict how hard the wind is going to blow. But even on a low light day, you're going to get X amount of sunshine, even if it's cloudy, even if it's rainy. So it's at least a little bit better on that, but it's got a big footprint, 300 acres. And I'm surprised that the more progressive, eco-friendly crowd in Homer, and there's quite a few of them there. Don't make a mistake about that. I imagine those people are kind of torn. I mean, they all want to go to renewables, but at the same time, they're 300 acres of pristine wilderness being chopped up and layered with 60,000 solar panels. I imagine there's a bit of a conundrum there, trying to decide which, how do we balance that out? Now, it could be good news overall for the people who are part of the Homer Electric Co-op. It's going to reduce their natural gas use by 15%. They're also putting in the gas turbine. They're putting in a new gas turbine, which is going to reduce their natural gas use by 15%, which I guess is good. No word on whether or not this will actually drop the actual cost of electricity, which is, according to somebody mentioned it to me this weekend. And again, I apologize. I just got back late last night. I was going to look these up, and I'm sure we'll dig into this a little bit more because, again, I have questions. But they were saying that it was like 24 cents a kilowatt hour for HEA down there, which is significantly higher. So not a. I mean, it's going to be interesting, but again, no word on whether or not this new solar panel this new solar farm will reduce the overall cost to Homerites people. And it's not just Homer folks, but it's people out on the peninsula, all the HEA people out there. Frank just said in the chat room that Golden Valley CEO gets paid $381,000 ish. That's his. So, I mean, I guess maybe that's what the market will bear. $400,000 for a nonprofit electric co-op, which is supposed to give money make it as affordable for people out there as it is. Oof. Well, we'll see. We'll see what that's like. I'm going to be digging into this a little bit more because, again, like I said, I have some questions about this. This seems, this is. The people responsible for the construction of this electric farm apparently is going to be Renewable IPP. That's they quote a gal named Jen Miller with Renewable IPP. So they are either responsible for it or have some kind of connection to it. They said they've been Renewable IPP and Homer Electric have been working on the project for about 3 years, and the project will sit on land owned by the Alaska Mental Health Trust under a long-term lease. And the project will be in the tens of millions of dollars, although they won't say exactly how much. It's going to be big. So will that mean relief? Does that mean relief will be coming to the folks in the HEA service area? I don't know. Maybe. Question mark. Maybe. All right. Willful blindness. We got a prime example of it. We're going to talk about that up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Yeah, Greg, I'm sorry. I thought about calling you yesterday, but man, I was on a mission to just get home by that point. I wanted to get home and get to my bed. And it was a busy weekend. Busy weekend. So it was good. Barbara, I did see your email. We'll try and get to that here this week if we can. We'll see what the week shakes out to be. But Barbara, I did get your email. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Grandpa. Congratulations. Who's Grandpa? Somebody a new Grandpa? Who's a new Grandpa? I'm an old Grandpa, but you know. The meeting of the cabal go well. Plans for world domination moving forward. Yeah, that's me. Planning to take over the world to leave you alone. I Snare Wolves over on Rumble says, I share my birthday with Grier Hopkins. Well, that can't be helped. It can't be helped at all. Oh, man. Chris says she blamed the report or lack thereof on the governor. Now, the governor has said that is fully her responsibility. When asked for it by Mike Shower, he said that he needed to speak to the lieutenant governor who's in charge of that stuff. But, you know, there you go. And Alexi says, where's Dahlstrom? Terry is not quite right. She was not a no-show. I was told last Thursday, and I announced on the program last Thursday that she would not be here. So that's, again, we need to be fair. We didn't solidify it. And then they told me that she was traveling this morning, so unavailable. So not fair to say she was a no-show. I knew she wasn't coming. And so did you, because I announced it here on the thing. Good morning. Terry says, someone has to pay for those panels that will never pay for themselves, the consumers. Well, I would hope somebody looked at the business plan and said, will these things pay for themselves? Should we invest all this money? I mean, are these things going to pay for themselves? I want to, I want to know. So I just want to know. Okay. Looks like IPP renewal has their fingers in a lot of things, says Brian. Oh, Brian's a new grandpa. Sorry, man. I haven't been on the socials or anything. So congratulations, Brian, for being a brand new grandpa. Gampies. AK Freedoms over on Rumble says, I'm in Facebook jail. So I'm back over here. That's what that's the beauty. You could always go over to Rumble and let's see what happens. Alexi was bummed. She was looking forward to hearing what what Nancy had to say. I mean, it definitely would have been nice. I invited everybody on the program, gosh, 8, 9, 10 weeks ago, probably longer than that. I mean, it's been like 10 weeks. And they get a hold of me the last week before primary, and I'm already pretty full up. And so I try and squeeze her in on Monday. I'm off today. I'm on vacation today, but I got up early, came back home early, got up early because I thought it was going to be Nick and Nancy. And then anyway, I decided I wasn't going to short shrift Nick because Nancy couldn't make it. So we're here. We're here doing our thing. So Brian says being a grandfather is a huge effort on his part. Yeah, I know. Sometimes you confuse that business with pleasure thing, man. You know how that works. All right, well, here we go. Bill's on a rant. That Bill's the one that's in jail. That's a big surprise, said no one ever. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Enemy. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
All right. So one of the problems that I see here in the state of Alaska, and I hate to offer problems without solutions. So I'm going to try, by the end of this segment, I'm going to try and offer up a solution as well. For what it's worth, I guess I will say what's going on for what it's worth. Alaska has a problem and has had a problem for many years of willful blindness. And I'm sure that there's some kind of other phrase that kind of portrays the same thing, meaning they're just willfully ignorant. They're refusing to see what's in front of their face. And in this case, what's in front of our face is that we are subject to something called arithmetic, right? That there is this fundamental force in the universe called math that states you cannot get something from nothing, essentially. I mean, I don't know if that's really what math states, but it's essentially the idea of you cannot spend more than you take in and expect it to go on inevitably. I mean, just not inevitably, but forever. I'm doing so well this morning in using my words. But we've had this problem for years. Legislators, sit in front of committees, they sit on the floor and they pontificate about how great Alaska is going to be if we only funded this program or that program. We create deeper problems by creating a dependency state where people in the state no longer are as self-reliant as they used to be, and instead are begging the government or demanding in some cases that the government provide something or create a program or do something for them. And the politicians just go, it'll all be fine. It'll all work out in the long run. If we just do this, this is perfect, right? Don't worry. This comes back to my train over the tracks analogy. My train's the gulch, the bridge is out and the train keeps coming. I've been using that analogy for years because to me, it is just the most visual reference that I can come out with. I mean, you're in the locomotive, you could look ahead, you could see that the bridge is out, and you have obviously, well, I guess you got more than two choices, but essentially you have two choices. You could apply the brake now and hopefully skid to a stop before the train hurtles off the edge of the trestle. Or the other option really is to just either do nothing or shovel more coal into the box and see how far you can leap the gap, right? The problem is that trains are not very aerodynamic and they have a tendency to fall with great rapidity. So, But that is the willful ignorance that we have, willful blindness that we have here in the state of Alaska, where they just seem like it's really an offshoot of the too big to fail mentality. Oh, we can't, we that would never happen. There'll always be money. Now, part of that is caused by the fact that we have this $80 billion permanent fund that I think many politicians, although they may not 100% understand the mechanics behind it, they may not understand that it's, constitutionally protected, or they just feel like, well, that no matter what happens, we've got the backing of this fund. So if we overspend, that eventually the money will come from somewhere. And since we've got this $80 billion in the piggy bank, it'll just be fine. Again, not understanding the mechanics of how the money comes out or anything else, except some of them do. Some of them do. They do understand that. That's why we've seen this push in the last, half a year, 10 months, to consolidate and combine the earnings reserve and the corpus of the fund, because they understand that train track, that trestle that's out, is approaching faster and faster. And I think they're starting to realize that it's not going to make it. So they're doing anything that they can do to bridge that gap. And right now, that would be access to the corpus of the permanent fund. That would be a good way to do it. And then they can continue their overspending into the future, probably, long enough that they'll be dead before the reckoning comes around. That's that's just kind of how it works. But in this state, we just seem to have the idea that whatever the state does and state government does is golden, and we should just get on board with it. We should just quit fighting it. Unfortunately, I've been fighting this for 25 years, arguing the same thing. I mean, I'm tired. I'll be honest with you. I'm tired of saying the same things over and over again for 25 years, which is you can't spend more than you take in and expect that it's going to go on forever. Because, it's gone on for half of my lifetime already. Maybe it will go on forever. If they get access to the corpus of the fund, maybe it will go on for the rest of my life. But see, the thing is that I'm not just worried about my lifetime. I'm worried about my children and my children's children. I'm worried about having something here in the future for future generations. And eventually it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. And then, then what are you going to do? The case in point that I want to point out today is the article that came through the ADN, Jenna Kuntz, over at the ADN, has written an article talking about Starlink and what a market disruptor Starlink is and how it has transformed the everyday life of thousands of Alaskans. And she starts off by telling the story of, where Starlink came from and how it launched and what's been going on, and how it has become an everyday, just kind of an everyday thing. There's a photo in the article, which I found really interesting, of a bunch of houses in Uktiavik, where you just look down the row of houses and there is Starlinks in front of every house. It's just a row. It's house after house after house, and each one has got. There's 8, 9, 10, a dozen Starlink dishes in the picture alone, where they just shot the picture down the front of the houses. They have become ubiquitous, right? Was that word I was looking for? And the worst thing is that, well, not the worst thing, I guess the best thing, Starlink has done this part without a lot of government money. Now, the telecoms, and there's a lot of them out there, have been responsible for what's going out there in the bush for years. And they have received a lot of money, and I mean a lot, just under the Biden administration. In just the last 4 years, Alaska and certain in-state providers have received close to $2 billion to support rural broadband development. With a B. $2 billion. But while the Alaska Broadband Office works to distribute, I had no idea that there was an Alaska Broadband Office, works to distribute the most recent $1 billion, a process the office estimates will take another 5 years to see the results of. It will take 5 years to distribute this money. Starlink is growing its customer base. Why? Well, because Starlink is it's amazingly cheaper. It's as I would say it's a third of what GCI and other telecoms are offering in these communities. GCI charges 3 times as much for a quarter of the speed that Starlink would provide. Upwards of $300 a month for like a 20 meg connection, 25 megabit connection. Whereas Starlink can get upwards of 500 megabyte connections. They say they're averaging about 100 meg connection. So 4 times as much as what, and they're only charging $90 a month. So after you pay for that first $500, because you got to buy the equipment from Starlink, it's like $500. But after that, you've paid for the dang thing in 2 months. And then you cut your internet bill to a third, and you have 4 times the speed. Now, part of the problem is, of that $2 billion, Starlink is getting nothing. And in fact, you can't even look at other internet service providers, whether it's a tribal broadband consortium, microcoms, Starlink, or anything else. They're cut out of accessing about a third of the funding because the FCC's definition of eligible telecommunications carrier excludes companies that don't provide voice services. Although technically voice over IP is pretty much everywhere, so why wouldn't you? But because they don't provide voice services, they're prevented from doing that. And even our legislature, when there was attempts made by Mike Shower and others this last go-around, when they were doing this basic assistant grant for broadband assistance grant, the BAG grant, and they said, okay, we'll just include Starlink in your discussions about this, and they just riddled them full of bullets and said, no way. Can't do it. Can't include Starlink or any other broadband in any of the, even though they could do it for a fraction of the cost. So, I mean, so they're out there. They're doing it. They're moving forward. Starlink is doing what no other provider's been able to do since the internet first arrived in Alaska, says Gina. Disrupt the market from one expert called a David and Goliath scenario. Everyday people against the billion-dollar telecoms. Starlink users are delivering a clear message to flagship telecoms like GCI, do better. And GCI says they're listening. Their senior vice president of corporate development, Billy Whalen, said his company saw the competition from a distance and launched an initiative to better serve rural residents. As part of that initiative, GCI is in the midst of 2 long-term projects it says will deliver underground fiber optic cables to 27 underserved communities. One that will lay down more than 800 miles of subsea floor from Kodiak to Unalaska You folks out in Alaska listening on the radio will be happy about that, I guess. And another that will connect 13 communities on the YK Delta. In both instances, the company is promising urban internet speeds for urban prices. I hope so. I mean, I won't hold my breath until I see it. Because, again, they were charging $300 for 20 megabit connections. But they did say all these projects takes time. So in the meantime, Starlink has come in and offered a really good option as folks were waiting for terrestrial connectivity. Once we deliver fiber service, we think we'll be able to deliver a very compelling internet service to those communities. If not, you've already lost the market share. Unless it is something that is either faster or cheaper or both, you will now have to lure those people away from Starlink. But it doesn't really matter because the government subsidized it all, right? It's not like GCI really has to make their money back on that investment. The government's paying for a big chunk of that. But I would hope that they are competitive in that regard. I would hope that they offer some competitive resources. And then it goes on to tell some stories about how people are using the internet and everything else. What the interesting one, do I have time? Photographer and digital content creator Eben Hobson of Uktiavik switched to Starlink during the fiber outage last year. Remember, they cut the undersea cable? And said with Starlink, he's able to produce and sell more content because he's a photographer and digital creator, because he doesn't have to wait for slow upload and download speeds. He said, it helped me reach out to clients in the lower 48 who were looking to buy Arctic content. Instead of waiting a whole 8-hour day for a few 45-second clips to upload to Google Drive, it takes under 15 minutes. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Just an example of what's going on. But again, willful blindness. We're going to do it this way because we've always done it this way, because that's the only way we know how to do it. And it doesn't matter what the cost is because somebody else will always pay. Oh, and we got that permanent fund in case we need that as well. Willful blindness. All right, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Let me see what else we got going on here. The road goes on forever and the party never ends. So Bill says, so I guess Terry reported me. Well, you apparently made it back on, so it must not have been that long. It's ubiquitous Nuktiavik. Yes, that's it right there. Harold says, we use Starlink in Alaska's remote west coast. It's comparable to GCI's fastest unlimited service. Many devices with video didn't have a single hiccup at all while we were out there. Musk received $900 million in federal subsidies to build out Starlink. I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm saying he didn't get any of the money on this side of the equation from the state of Alaska. That's all I'm saying. David said it's not only been cheaper, it's been so much more reliable. Never had such good internet speeds. Scrolling through here. Starlink is on sale right now for $300. That's a good deal. Yeah, that's a good deal. We should get the legislature to drop the fiber cable and go to Starlink, give us back some of our PFD money. Well, that's the thing. They tried. I mean, that was something that, again, Mike Shower tried to do, was make it optional so that some people, but no, they wouldn't have anything to. Why? Because some people have got their fingers in the pies. Let's put it that way. Some people in the rural communities, Lyman Hoffman, have got they've got their fingers in companies that are partnered up in this whole broadband thing, and they're making money from the hardwired fiber cable and everything else. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to hook up. Let's see. Shelley is off on her way to North Pole to wave signs for interior conservatives. We haven't even talked about that tomorrow is primary day. So there you go. Let's see. Sullivan says we're about to get a new icebreaker, and they're going to dock it in Juneau. Wouldn't Kodiak or Bethel or Nome be a little closer to the ice? Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, that seems a little weird, There we go here. Hopefully that major outage will push more residents up there to do the same without the internet up there. It's the remotest of the remote. They're so screwed. This article actually has got it talks about that was one of the big pushes, that when that hard cable got cut up there in the North Slope, it was a wake-up call, and the basically the Starlink dishes started sprouting like mushrooms all over the place. Yeah. Because DOT does not have knowledge to build a road correctly. I have Starlink at both my house and my cabin, and says Greg, and he ordered the new personal Starlink. That's the little portable one. I got the offer for that. I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't jump on it. You'll have to let me know how it is. You have to let me know how it is, Greg. I did get the offer for that to, I guess, be a beta tester or whatever. But, oops, I didn't post that article to everywhere. Let me repost that again. Post that there, and then all the folks out here on Starlink, or on Rumble. There you go. All right. Whoops. Come on. Stop moving. Okay. How was your guys' day or weekend or whatever it was? Your 1 day off, your 2 days off. Man, it was supposed to rain all weekend in Homer, and it was nothing but blue skies and sunshine. We got down there, and it was raining just a little bit on in the evening when we got down there, but by the next morning, it was bright and sunshiny. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just gorgeous. Absolutely. It was just, it was just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Just another, but boy, so much humidity. It was so humid in Homer this weekend. I don't ever remember feeling that like sticky almost. It was crazy, but it was good. It was good stuff. All right, let's continue ahead here. We got one final segment. Nick Begich is joining us in hour 2. Let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. There you go. Whatever you do it. Do it now. Let's get to it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Well, here we are. One final segment. Running up into the top of the hour. Coming up in hour 2, Nick Begich will be joining us. Republican candidate for US Congress. Tomorrow is the final day to vote in the primaries, right? Because there's been early voting. Today is the last day of early voting. And then tomorrow is the day, the actual regular voting day. So you got to get out there and get it done. And there's an interesting article in the ADN talking about this, basically asking the question of, most of Alaska's candidates are already thinking about November. Here's why the primary election still matters. Sean McGuire, Ira Samuels over at the ADN writing this piece. And it's interesting because they take a crack at it and say, look, this is the problem. Most people with the new ranked choice voting system, a lot of people are confused. And a lot of them don't understand that all these that all these races, if they have 4 or less, are going through. And there's just a lot of confusion. And they do a really good job in this article of kind of straightening a lot of it out and pointing out. I didn't notice that they talked about it being a pick one primary. Maybe they did and I just missed it, and that it's possible in there. But they talk about how this is the confusion is leading to some concerns about a low turnout in the primary. And of course, we talk a lot about early voting because it can give us an indicator of where things are going on. But their report that according to the Division of Elections, early voter turnout ahead of the primary has been down compared to recent cycles. And they actually quote Kathy Tilton in here, Speaker of the House. She says, it's very quiet right now. We have a primary on Tuesday, and a lot of people don't even know that there's a primary. Which, I mean, I guess if you're not paying attention, that there's I know, but again, we're more engaged. We're the super voters, right? I mean, we're engaged in this. And what's interesting is Alaska political consultants say primary voters are typically more partisan than those in a general election, meaning Tuesday's results may not be an indicator of electoral success in November. In fact, it goes on to talk about how there have been other primaries where people have, lost the primary, but ultimately won the election. So it does happen. Anyway, but tomorrow is election day, primary election day. Primary, is that it's a primary election. So get out there and vote. Bring a few people with you. Get out there. Now, does it matter in most of the races? No. Out of the 50 legislative races, there are only 2 that have 4 or more than 4 candidates. Because under ranked choice voting, again, it's a jungle primary, so it's a pick one primary. You only get to pick a single candidate off the ballot tomorrow or today if you're early voting. And then the top 4 remaining candidates then move on to the general, where you'll be able to rank them in order of your choice. So that can be confusing for some people. I understand that it's a pick one primary and moving forward. But out of all the races, all 50 races, only 2 of them have more than 4 candidates. So it's really only going to affect 2 specific House races, legislative races. Then the big show for the primary, of course, is the congressional seat, because there are, I think, a dozen candidates, some of which don't even live in the state. I mean, it just gets weird. There's a lot of weirdness going on there. But there, of course, are more than 4 candidates in that race. And the big question is will the top 3, and as all respect to Gerald Hikas, he's been running for various seats for years, and he's kind of one of those perennial candidates who uses it as a platform to talk about his issues, which I'm fine with. But really, there are 3 candidates that are in the top that have the potential to launch into this, and that, of course, is Mary Peltola, Nick Begich, and Nancy Dahlstrom. So the question is, what will come out of that? So if nothing else, I'm hoping that you go out and vote, at least even if you just, I don't have time, I'm just going to mark the congressional seat and then move on. I hope at least you do that, because otherwise somebody else is going to choose for you. Now, Nick is the only one so far who has agreed to and committed to bowing out of the race if he doesn't do well in the primary. If he does not win the primary amongst everybody who's not Mary Peltola, then he says he will drop out. Gerald Hikas said he's in it to win it. He's going to stay with it. Nancy Dahlstrom has refused and said she's not going to. I mean, there's been some talk about how she might go back and talk to the Republican Party, but there's been no commitment that she will drop out if she doesn't win the nomination. So the potential is there again to split the vote, just like we did last time. So when I see stories coming out on places like Must Read Alaska, talking about her performance as the head of the Department of Corrections, then the commissioner, because she was the commissioner of the Department of Corrections during COVID before she was lieutenant governor. At some point I thought, well, this is, maybe we're getting a little nitpicky, but the more that I thought about it, the more I realized, well, it does matter because the buck stops with her, right? She's the commissioner. She's the one in charge. So 2 stories came out this last week. One talking about how they withheld family and lawyer visits for prisoners unless the inmates got a shot, basically held them hostage and said, you can't, it's, medical coercion. You can't visit with your attorneys or with your family if you're a prisoner unless you got the COVID shot. And then a second story that came out late on Friday talking about how innocent Alaskans who were either released on their own recognizance or could make bail were instead segregated into medical wards because they may have, quote unquote, come into contact with somebody who had COVID, and they were locked up and basically not allowed to make bail or leave. And that when their friends and families and attorneys tried to find them, the Division of Corrections said, oh, well, we don't know where they are. We don't know. We have no idea where they are. They're not here. We're sure. But, and so at first I thought, well, maybe this is a little nitpicky. But again, she was the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. Either the buck stops with the boss or it doesn't. So, I think that this isn't important. These are the kind of questions we should be asking because she has really no other track record. Now, Mary Peltola, we can nail on her voting record, right? And her positions and the things she said. But Nancy's been, what has she done? What legislation has she championed? What stances has she taken on? Does anybody know this thing on? Hello? So maybe we have to pay attention to this. Nick Begich up next, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Yeah, so, this whole thing, like I said, when I first saw these stories and I caught them over the weekend, I know I normally don't pay attention to the news on the weekend, but I was just browsing through and I saw it and I was like, well, it's kind of, I don't know if it's dirty pool or not, but it just seemed like, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized we have no other record to go on with Nancy Toll. Right? Name me one piece of legislation that she was passionate about. Right? Sarah Vance was passionate about education. Mike Shower was passionate about election reform. Ben Carpenter's passionate about fiscal issues. I can name different, issues that, Loki Tobin, Democratic senator, she's passionate about getting that BSA. I can name these different candidates or these different elected officials and know what they stood for. But I got nothing with Nancy. So maybe we just have to look at her track record. And so this is fair game. This is fair game. I think, because we don't know who she is. And she hasn't been doing interviews apparently. She's done a few of the meet and greets and things like that and the Republican stuff. But again, very quiet. She's basically doing the Kamala Harris thing. She's just sitting in the background, not really talking to anybody. hoping that the name recognition and all the money from Mitch McConnell and company will get her through the door. But what has she done? What does she stand for? What we don't know. I mean, I really would have loved for her to be on the program today. And that was the initial plan, but she was traveling. So she'll be on later this week, hopefully. But the question is, by then the primary will be, it's a one and done. So we should know by Wednesday what the primary is said, or at least within a margin of certainty. And if she is beat Nick at the polls, but she's not committed to dropping out, or she loses to Nick at the polls and is not committed to dropping out, what goes on then? What happens then? I just don't know. I just don't even know at this point. Okay. Well, let's get into this. Let's jump over here. Tomorrow is election day. So let me give you one more bite at the apple. Let me give you one more chance to chat, to find out a guy who's not afraid to take a stand on something, who you do know what he's about and what he stands for. Nick Begich joins us this morning to discuss everything. Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. You're a little low. Your microphone's a little low. Are you everything the same? Is it just me?
Everything should be the same. I haven't changed anything on my side, but
there we go. It's a little better now. I turned you up a little bit there.
Okay, good.
But yeah, you're coming in. You start off real quiet, and then you get to a regular level, and then you go quiet again. So be loud and proud, Nick. Be loud.
You got it.
Be loud and proud this morning.
Awesome.
So I had a relaxing weekend. Well, it was fun. How was your weekend? I imagine you've been running like.
Yeah, it wasn't perhaps as relaxing as yours was, but it was a lot of fun. You know, I enjoy going out and meeting people. That's one of the fun parts about the process. You get to hear from a lot of different Alaskans from all parts of the state. And this weekend was no different. The fair started up, so we were the only congressional campaign in the last what's supposed to be the last Alaska State Fair parade in Palmer. So we had a good time doing that. There were probably, I'm going to guess and say, about 1,000 people that showed up for that. And then we went right over to the Matsu Republican Women's booth at the fair, and just continued meeting people. I think I was out there for a total of, between the parade and everything else, 14 hours, just standing on my feet, shaking hands and talking with folks. And lots of people really interested in the race. A lot of encouraging words from people as well. But for folks that are listening, it was surprising. There were a lot of people that didn't know that there is an election tomorrow. That is tomorrow. That is not, next Tuesday or the following Tuesday. No, it's tomorrow. You can vote early today,
right,
and you can vote tomorrow, and then that's it. You won't have a say. So make sure that you vote and encourage other people to vote as well. Your friends don't know there's an election.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the thing. A lot of folks don't know that there's an election going on right now. Somebody asked, and I scrolled past it and now I can't find it. They're saying, ask Nick why I'm seeing all these Nancy's ads and nothing from him. I don't know. Why is that? Here we go. Please ask Nick why I'm flooded with commercials from Nancy and haven't seen one from him. Nick, what's going on?
Yeah, it's amazing when DC picks you, they put a lot of money behind you, right? And so this has been one of the interesting things about this race. More than 60% of the money that I have raised has come from inside of Alaska, which is actually unprecedented for a major candidate in a federal race in Alaska. Never, very rare. I'm not aware of any race where a major candidate's been able to do that. But for the other candidates, the other major candidates on the left and the right, 90% or more of their money is coming from outside, and most of that money is coming from DC sources. So DC's got deep pockets. They're going to just flood you with ads. And but at the end of the day, I'm funded by Alaskans. I'm fueled by Alaskans. We don't have the kind of resources that folks in DC have. What we have is you. And I would much rather have you than DC.
All right, we got to go. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Hour 2 is right now.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby. Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream, links to our simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and pretty much everything else related to the show. And also, of course, broadcasting live across the state on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to hour 2 of this Monday edition of the Michael Duke Show. And we are ready to go. We're talking today with a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Nick Begich. And it's important. Why are we talking to him today? Because, well, tomorrow is the primary. And so it matters. Maybe not in every other race in the state, but in this race, it does matter because there's about a dozen candidates running for the U.S. House of Representatives for Congress. And it's a pick one primary. So you get to pick one and figure out who the top 4 are going to be. And it's important that we are talking about this because tomorrow is the primary. Today's the last day of early voting. Tomorrow is the primary. And then it's done. And that's going to be important. So we're going to talk about that with Nick Begich, who joins us right now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Great to be back. And I just want to tell folks who may be tuning in this morning, maybe you're not regular listeners, maybe you are. I have made a commitment to be out front on the radio, public, live stream regularly all year this year. And I am the only candidate in this race that has done that because I think transparency and having the ability to interact with and talk to the people who are running to represent you in DC is important. And that's been something that I've made as a commitment in this race. And for folks who are listening, recognize if I'm your representative, this isn't the last time you're going to hear from me. You're going to hear from me a lot. And I want to hear from you so that I can represent your ideas and the opportunities that you see for our state down in DC.
You know, it's this is an interesting because I think in some ways it's being billed as kind of a, well, I mean, I don't know if it's true. It's kind of a David and Goliath moment, or maybe it's a hometown versus big city thing because you have been supported by many, individuals in the state of Alaska. Most of your fundraising has come from inside the state, whereas a lot of the money that your Republican opponent, Nancy Dahlstrom, is getting is from the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee. The powers that be in Washington want Nancy there. They don't want Nick there because Nick makes them nervous. And so you've got kind of this whole, like I said, kind of this David and Goliath thing, but I don't know if it's really a David and Goliath because you have got the backing of even more. I guess you got, again, more endorsements from local committees, local groups, district, Republican districts, women's clubs. I mean, you must have like a trophy wall of all these endorsements going on. And in fact, a lot of these councils and districts are now putting forward resolutions asking for any Republican who doesn't win the primary, who's not the top vote getter in the Republican side for the primary, to drop out. You are the only candidate that I've really seen in the congressional race that's committed to that. Heikes is on the record for the ADN saying he's in it to win it. He's not going to leave. Dahlstrom kind of mealy-mouthed around it and said, well, she'd have a conversation with the Republicans party if I mean, there's no commitment there whatsoever. But you've said, this is why tomorrow is so important. You've said if you don't win the Republican side of the primary, that you're going to drop out, because last year we saw the split. Or last time around, we saw what happened.
That's 100% true. And look, at the end of the day, if you really care about the state, if you really care about making sure Mary Peltola is removed from her position, the best thing to do is to get this thing to a one-on-one. We didn't do it last time. We didn't do it last time for a number of reasons. It didn't happen, but we have to look back and learn from what occurred in 2022. And the best way to get Peltola out is to get down to a one-on-one, an effective one-on-one heads-up race where we can contrast and spend our energy and resources contrasting the policies of the right with Peltola's leftist progressive record in the House. And if we can do that, we will win. But if we are working all the way up until November against each other, we're not going to win this race. And that's why it's so important for us to get down to one. And that's why I've made that commitment from day one. You touched on it. I am proud to say that I have more support from in-state than any other candidate in the race combined, more current or former elected officials in state than anyone else in the race combined. 6 of the 7 Republican women's clubs have endorsed me. 14 of the districts, the Republican organized districts, have formally endorsed my campaign. We have support from the Freedom Caucus. We've got support from Byron Donalds, from Mike Lee. These are strong America First conservatives in the House that have stood up and said, "Hey, I'm with Nick." And so we're excited. We got a lot of support. We're a grassroots campaign, and at the end of the day, I tell people DC doesn't vote in our elections, right? And so all the money in the world can come in from DC, but at the end of the day, it's going to be Alaskans that decide the election. And I would much rather, as I just said in the prior segment, I would much rather have the support of Alaskans than the support of DC any day.
Well, and I think you're putting in the work, Nick. I think that's one thing that's pretty obvious to anybody, and maybe not to the general public, but to anybody who's kind of in the arena student. I'm watching these things and seeing it. I mean, you're traveling around the state. You're going to every little, podunk ribbon cutting and parade and, meet and greet and barbecue and backslapper. I mean, you seem to be everywhere all at once. You've had a pretty busy schedule the last year.
It's been very busy. Look, and this is an interesting thing that Don Young told me once. He said, if you don't like running for office, don't run for the House, because you're running every 2 years. And in truth, you never really stop campaigning. But campaigning, we think of campaigning as, a big ad production program, because that's what it's become today. But campaigning is supposed to be the process by which you go out, you meet people, you listen to them, you understand their issues, you work together on a solution, and then you go down to DC and see if you can get it done, if you can make some progress on that. You can't do that from your basement. As much as the consultants would love to tell you, oh, just sit down, we'll run the ads, this, that. No, if that's the strategy, you're not going to be representing the people. You're going to be representing the polls, the special interests, others. But if you want to have direct conversations with people, it doesn't happen from home. You got to go out there, shake hands, meet people, and listen. And that's what I have tried to do for the last year plus. That I got in this race last July, and from day one, people say, well, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. I said, no, it's a sprint. Have you ever seen a marathon runner, a professional? They're running 5-minute miles, 26 miles in a row. It's a sprint. And that's the way I've treated this race from the start. Let's get out and meet people and connect with Alaskans. Nope, I lost you there.
I don't see any other folks out there who are doing it. You've made an impression. Like I said, I don't know where District 6 is, but it's okay. You've made the impression with the local people, and that's the important part.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, because I am having those conversations, because I am able to travel the state, because I've made that a priority. People have had an opportunity to ask me the questions that they want, right? Because people want to know, who are you? What do you believe? What are your priorities going to be? Right? And the truth of the matter is, people in these jobs, they don't have all the answers. They really don't. I mean, I don't care. You take the smartest person out there, they're not going to know everything about everything. And that's another reason why it's so important to go out to the districts and go out to the various areas of Alaska and travel the way that we have and I have, because I need to know what the solutions are from you. I need to know what the problems are from you. And look, Alaska needs a voice in Congress again.
That's something. I'm sorry, Nick. That's something that the polls a lot of times don't pick up on. They don't know. I mean, they may know the broad issues. What is the broad thing on people's mind? But they don't know what the guy down in Ninilchik is worried about, right? They don't know what the guy in North Pole or the gal in North Pole is worried about. They don't know what the people in Tok are worried about. They may know the broader issues, but unless you get with them face to face and you press the flesh, you're not going to hear what their issues are.
That's right. One of the big issues that just doesn't show up in most polls is related to our fisheries. We've got major issues with our fisheries. And, as a result of having so many of these conversations in coastal Alaska, and on the Kenai Peninsula, I tell you, I made the decision, and it's been public for a while, that I will not take trawl fleet money. And I have said on the record, I will not take that money. I view the practices of particularly the Seattle-based trawl fleet as problematic for Alaska, and I'm not going to be compromised by accepting any funds from that group, while we have important policies that need to be constructed around those practices. And so I've even said, if somehow a check gets through and someone sees that we've accepted a check inadvertently, we'll return that check. So we're very serious about that, but that's the kind of thing that you learn when you're on the campaign trail. And I'm the only Republican in the race that's made that commitment. I know there are other Republicans that have taken trawl fleet money from the Seattle trawl fleet. I will not, have not. And, I think that's one of those things, to your point, you learn it on the trail because you go out and you talk to people.
Yeah, you have to do it. I don't want to do some comparatives here in a minute, Nick, but before we go, I got about 3 or 4 minutes here. Give me the highlights of what Nick Begich is going to focus on in office. Congressman Nick Begich is now in office. What is your hit list? What is the top 3 or 4 things that Nick is going to be hyper focused on for your first 2 years in office?
That's right. I think we've got a huge opportunity as we pivot supply chains out of China, and we're looking to reestablish supply chains either domestically or with more friendly nations internationally. I think Alaska needs to be the beginning of those supply chains. We have nearly every critical mineral on the critical minerals list. We've got base metals, we've got precious metals, we've got rare earths in abundance, which is not easy to find in North America. We know we have incredible oil and gas deposits, but it is estimated that Alaska has more undiscovered oil and gas deposits yet to be found than any other state in the country. So that's critically important. We need an Alaska package to take some of the discretion that has been vested into the executive office of the presidency off the table so that we can develop the resources that we have, that we were promised when we became a state. And so it's a big project. It might take a number of years to get done, but we passed ANCSA, we passed ANOCA. We can do something like this in the Congress again, and I think Alaska's future depends on it. When it comes to national issues, we've got major issues at the border. We've got major issues with fentanyl in Alaska. We have got to secure our border. What we're dealing with is not immigration. It's not even migration, really. It's an invasion of people from around the world, encouraged by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the so-called border czar, to bring these people in and use them in the 2030 census to gain apportionment of congressional seats in sanctuary states and cities. We need to stop that. That's huge for us. It's not just about the money that they're getting from the government for free healthcare, free education, free food, free housing. No, it's not just that. It's that the Democrats are using this as a strategy to try to achieve permanent power in the House and the presidency. That's a big threat to us. Secondly, inflation. Milton Friedman. If you're a fan of economics, you'll know Milton Friedman. What he said was, if you want to know what the true tax is, just look at the government spending, because what you don't pay for in taxes, you're going to pay for in inflation. One way or another, you're going to pay for it, and that's what's happening right now. Government spending has gotten out of control. The deficit, that is the difference between how much we collect in tax revenue and how much we spend, is about $2 trillion a year. And as that piles up in the national debt, more and more of our tax dollars are just going to pay the interest on the debt. And so we're about to fall into this debt spiral we're not going to be able to get out of. We need discipline in the Congress. And then lastly, we've got a culture war that's been going on for a number of years, and the right is just starting to wake up, and I'm glad that we are. But the reality is the hard left has hijacked yesterday's Democrat Party. The JFK Democrat Party of yesterday is dead and gone. And it's been replaced by a socialist, even Marxist left that wants to take their ideology and install it like a software update on your kids in school. And so they're starting as early as possible, all the way down to kindergarten on up, trying to politicize the classroom, and they're doing the same thing at the Department of Defense and other areas of government. This has to stop. It must stop. And it's a long-term generational threat, the way that these guys are coming in and trying to convert children in a classroom that's supposed to be about math, science, reading, and accurate history. And so those are priorities for me. I know they're priorities for not just Alaskans, but people across this country. But to get that done, you need a fighter. You need fighters all around the country to go down to DC and say, we will not compromise on these core issues, because these things are going to kill the country if we don't take a stand. And I want to take a stand for Alaska.
Nick Begich is our guest candidate for Congress. We're going to return with him here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, we continue. Nick Begich is our guest right now on the program. Yeah, sorry, I pushed the wrong button there for a second and muted myself. That's probably people were applauding somewhere when I did that. Nobody needs to hear that guy. Nobody needs to hear that guy. Harold makes a couple salient points, I thought. He said, whoops, just lost my light. Harold makes a couple of great points. We don't always agree, but even a stop clock is right twice a day, right? So, but Harold says, it's unfortunate that people can't get their ideas out there. The ones with the most dollars win. And then he says dollars usually support special interests, never the best ideas. And I think that's the point of what Nick has been doing. You've been out there getting your ideas out there. It's not necessarily about the dollars. It's about the work. And I will say that you have been doing the work, more than any other candidate that I've seen in quite a while, out there doing the things, meeting the people, and doing things like that.
Well, and I'll tell you what, 99, actually more than 99, but more than 99% of the money that has come into our campaign has come from human beings, individuals, right? Other campaigns out there are raising, I'll tell you, Mary has raised over $1 million from corporate political action committees. It's interesting. The Democrats run around all the time and say, oh, no, we can't have all this money in politics. We can't have all this corporate money in politics. And then they rail against corporations.
Dark money. We can't have dark money.
And yet she's benefiting the most from it. She's raised almost $1 million on that alone. There were entire races for 2 years, right? Entire 2-year cycles where Don Young didn't raise $1 million. And not just one, several of his races in recent memory. He did not raise $1 million, and she raised that from political action committees alone. Consider that Mary Peltola has raised almost $8 million in this campaign, probably $10 million by the end, and less than 10% of that coming from Alaskans. Look, at the end of the day, it's up to you. I mean, this country doesn't belong. to the politicians. At least it shouldn't. It belongs to you. This is your country and it's your state. And I tell people all the time, think about this. You are not the property of the United States government, and your property is not the property of the United States government. But the people have to take a stand. They have to decide for themselves what kind of country they want to live in. And people like me can run, and we can go out and we can meet all the folks out there that we want. I could meet every single person in Alaska, but it's up to Alaska. It's not up to me what kind of country you want.
And compare Nick's 90+% of people, of donations coming from people to David Boyle, he's been death on this kind of stuff before. OpenSecrets.org says 24% of Dahlstrom's contributions are from individuals. Almost a third, 28%, are from PACs. And so, yeah, I mean, who's funding funding what at this point? That's a huge question. And I think, again, to quote Cuba Gooding Jr., follow the money, right? I mean, that's what you need to do. Show me the money, and I will do it right there. Sandy asked this question before when you were on, and I meant to ask it then, and I didn't. This is kind of a departure, but we were talking about fishing, and so Sandy asked, are you in favor of buying out the SetNet sites?
Yeah, that's a state question. I'm happy to answer the question, but it's a state question as I understand it, because it's the state that usually issues that does issue most of those permits, and they're the ones that determine whether there's a policy to buy them out. I do think it makes sense to buy out the permits voluntarily, obviously, but I think that's helpful, and it allows there to be a sufficient level of fishing opportunities available to set netters. At the end of the day, these are family businesses, and we need to make sure that they remain healthy and strong. And the state issues those permits, and gets paid to issue those permits. And I think if they've issued too many, they need to buy them back up, because at the end of the day, it's a fixed resource. We need to make sure people can make a living doing it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I that makes sense in that regard. It's a management issue at that point. And Kim says what we've been talking about, same thing. We're still going to get Patola if one of you doesn't drop out. We can't make the same mistake. Again, that's why Nick has committed to dropping out if he doesn't win the Republican side in the primary. All right, we're going to continue and jump back in. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to check us out on Rumble if you haven't done that already. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
The show continues. You hear the capital letters in that, can't you? We're here with Nick Begich, candidate for U.S. House for Congress. And we've talked to Nick a few times here. We really haven't kind of jumped down into the nitty gritty. We've talked a lot about Mary Peltola's positions. We've talked a lot about the national issues that are kind of crunching down on us and some of those problems. But one of the things we haven't really kind of dived into, which we need to now, because again, tomorrow's the primary, and this is the decision process where we're going to decide who, is the Republican candidate in one way or the other. We haven't really delineated the differences between Nick and Nancy Dahlstrom, who is his number one competitor. I think anybody would acknowledge that it's a Nick and Nancy race versus Mary, essentially. It's a three-way race at this point. So, Nick, let's talk a little bit about this. You've taken positions on things that I think you've done a good job at, even if you weren't 100% on an issue, you would say that. But you've taken positions on most everything that we've discussed on this program over the last year. Whereas with Nancy, we really don't know where she stands on much of anything. There's a lot of kind of vague assurances in one way or the other, but really no answers. She hasn't come on. She's not really doing public appearances, et cetera, et cetera. But you have been, you've probably seen her more than anybody else listening to the program, out there. So what sets you apart from Nancy Dahlstrom? I mean, with all love and respect and everything, it is a race, and we need to know who is doing what and who believes in who.
Well, first of all, I'm the only candidate in this race that has been willing to take a stand against ranked choice voting. I'm opposed to it. I've made very clear on this show and in other venues around the state why I believe we need to repeal ranked choice, and I signed the repeal petition. I think that's a huge difference. If you want someone out there, a champion in this race, that's going to continue to talk about why we need to repeal ranked choice, then you need to keep me in the race. I need you to vote before the end of the day tomorrow, so that I can keep talking about that as we get closer to the opportunity to repeal it in November. That's a huge difference. Another difference, we mentioned it a moment ago, but look, I haven't taken money from the Seattle Trawl Fleet, and I am taking a stand on that issue. And I'm the only person on the right-hand side of the aisle that has said that and has done that. And so I think that's a significant distinction. You know, there are other distinctions as well. Some are policy related like those, but there are others just demographically, right? I am 46, and I've got a lot of, God willing, some years in front of me. And, you know, while I support term limits, I also recognize that's not the world we live in right now. And if we want to have influence with only one member out of 435 in the United States House, the only way we're going to do that is to start rebuilding some seniority. And again, God willing, I got the runway in front of me. I've got the ability and the energy to rebuild the seniority that we need and start to make Alaska a priority for the other members of Congress again. That's really important, right? Because they all go down there with their own agenda for their district. And if we don't have a true champion able to tell Alaska's exciting story, and if they're not compelling, and if they're not energetic, and if they're not that kind of person that's going to get people excited, it's not going to happen for us. And I think that's a big contrast between me and my other Republican opponents. And so, you know, you got policy differences, sure, but you have some stylistic differences that will actually result in some significant differences in what we get for the state of Alaska.
Well, and I think the big change here, the big difference between the two of you is, do you want business as usual to continue in the Congress? Right? Because it's essentially what you're getting here. You've got the Mitch McConnells of the world out there who are trying to create a cadre of yes men and women who will basically just do what they're told and perpetuate the business as usual attitude that's going on in Washington. The problem is that anybody who's been paying attention understands that business as usual in Washington is going to lead us to bankruptcy, which again has serious knock-on effects as far as being a world power and everything else, and is just going to create more issues. We need people who will question, not just go along to get along, but will question authority, who will ask the question, well, you've done it this way always, why? Isn't there a better mousetrap? Can't we do it a different way? And they're pouring millions of dollars into this state to try and keep business as usual. To me, that's the biggest change. I mean, you're talking with people like Mike Lee, et cetera.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the case. And, you know, when you talk about making the kinds of changes that we're talking about making in Congress, you have to have people that are bold on these issues. Let me tell you something. If someone is hiding from you on the campaign trail, if someone is not answering the tough questions, don't expect them to suddenly turn around when they get to DC and answer tough questions and fight for you and show up. If they ain't going to show up today, you can be certain they're not going to show up tomorrow. Right? That's really important. So how someone campaigns is an indication of how they're going to legislate. And I have not been afraid to take positions. We may not agree 100% of the time, but you're going to know where I stand, right? And I'll tell you, and I will listen. I will listen. I've said freely, I don't have all the answers. I will listen, but I will tell you, if you're not hearing from somebody, if all you hear are the ads, and you're not hearing them on the radio, and you're not seeing them in person, and they're not showing up in your community, and you're not talking to them in person, there's a problem, because that person's not going to be able to represent you in the proper way. When you look at background, I haven't spent 20, 30 years in politics. Okay, so for some people that's a negative. They say, oh, you know, Nick hasn't spent those decades in politics. That's true. I haven't. I come from the business side. I started and ran my own businesses before all this. And I have laid those things down in order to run for Congress. If you want someone that doesn't come from a lifetime of politics, then I'm your guy. If you want someone that comes from a lifetime of politics, I am not your person. If you're looking for someone to go down there and just push the right button every time, follow orders, push the button, okay, I'm not your guy. Vote for somebody else. If you want someone to go down there and ask those tough questions to shake it up, vote for me. But it's up to you, right? Just make sure that you're involved. Make sure you're informed, you're educated. When you go to the polls, that you go and make an informed decision. And remember, vote by the end of the day tomorrow, because this is the primary and it does matter. It is important. I need your vote. And let me just tell you one thing too. People ask me all the time, well, what can I do? How can I help? How could my $20 really help your campaign? Well, first of all, it does help. But let me tell you something easy you can do right now. Tell your friends who you're supporting. Just set up a text message. It'd take you 10 minutes to go through 100 contacts in your phone and just say, I'm supporting Nick for these reasons. Vote by tomorrow. Don't say August 20th. Say tomorrow, because that's August 20th, right?
Right,
Vote by
right.
Tuesday. But tell people in your circle, friends, family, neighbors, and you can do it real quick with a text message. And that will go a long way to help and make sure that we're in this race and we're talking about the issues you care about all the way through to November and beyond.
And I think it's ultimately important, again, because you are, and I mean, I hate to keep coming back and beating this dead horse, but you were the only candidate who said, if you don't win the primary side of the Republican side of the primary, that you're going to drop out, which means you'll be left with the choice of Nancy Dahlstrom versus Peltola. Now, if I'm going to pull the lever, okay, who am I going to vote for? It's pretty obvious there, but I would like a candidate who shows up. I would like a candidate who is earning it, who has tried to earn it for the last year, not just because they were picked by some group in D.C.
Well, yeah, I mean, isn't that the problem for all of politics right now? I think it was interesting. RFK Jr. actually came out with a little piece of information that showed up on my Twitter feed, my X feed, over the weekend. According to some research, 861 people control 50% of all political spending in America today. That is nuts. That is crazy, right? So the messaging that you're hearing, all that stuff, when you see ad after ad after ad after ad, wait a minute, who's paying for this? Where is this coming from? And what do those people owe their sponsors when they get to DC? Because that stuff doesn't come for free. It comes with an expectation that you're going to be there when they need them. Let me tell you something. There are 20,000 lobbyists in DC. 20,000. There's only 535 members of Congress when you include the Senate. So think about the ratio. You're talking almost 40-1 lobbyists to members. When the lobbyists are writing the checks, they're gonna expect something. And as was put up earlier in the show, I'm not taking that money. 99% of my money's come from human beings, individuals, and most of that, more than 60% of it, from Alaskans. So that matters. It should matter, I think, when you're going in and you're trying to decide who is it that I'm going to vote for tomorrow or today if you're early voting. Think about that. Who's going to be working for you? I'm beholden to one group, Alaskans. That's it.
Right. Nick Begich is our guest candidate for Congress. We're going to continue here in just a moment. We'll be back talking with Nick. Final segment. We'll give him a little bit of free reign. I know that's dangerous, but we'll give him a little bit of free reign. Let him talk about whatever else he wants. His final exhortation to the public. We'll be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Okay. I've got a couple questions here. Timmy Timmy, I need more. Are you saying that Nick is a Democratic operative? Is that what you're saying? Simply because his name is Begich? Is that the innuendo here? Or again, I just looked to the senator from, where is Senator Kennedy from? He's from
Louisiana.
Louisiana. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably one of the most right-wing senators in the entire Congress, and he's his last name is Kennedy. I don't think that necessarily means what you think it means.
I remind people all the time, look, one of the greatest Republicans that we've ever had as president, Ronald Reagan, was a Democrat before he was a Republican. Donald Trump was a Democrat who donated to Hillary Clinton before he was a Republican. Right. I've never been a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Republican. I was in Young Republicans in high school, for goodness sakes. And I was raised by conservative, Republican, Christian grandparents. Out of the state of Alaska. They wanted to get as far away from the Begich family as possible and move to Florida. and I grew up down there. Okay. So, if you're doomed in America by your last name, well, I don't know where else you can go.
Exactly.
Right?
You got a lifetime of track record and achievement, and just because somebody else shares your last name, it's like, hey, all I hear, a lot of times people meet me the first time, they go, "Are you related to that David Dukes guy?" No, not related to David Dukes. That's that. Just because somebody else has got the last name does not mean I'm a member of the KKK. All right. Fat Ray says, did I miss the question on the Freedom Caucus? Let me scroll backwards here, Fat Ray. Maybe I missed your question, because I know that you've done a lot of work with the Freedom Caucus, right? And you will caucus with them. I mean, you're going to work with them on that.
I'm sorry.
You're going to work with the Freedom Caucus. Is that? I'm looking for his question.
I'm endorsed by the Freedom Caucus. They don't just hand those endorsements out. Let me tell you something. That's it's not an easy endorsement to get. I've been endorsed by a number of members of the Freedom Caucus as well, right? Byron Donalds, Scott Perry, who's the former chair, Bob Good, who's the current chair, Eric Burleson, Andy Ogles, others. These people are members of the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus itself has endorsed me. And for people who aren't familiar with that group, it is the conservative core of the House Republican Caucus.
This may have been the question from somebody else. It says, I heard a rumor Nick may not join the Freedom Caucus. I'd very much like to hear from himself on that.
Don't believe everything you hear. That's nonsense. It's interesting. The internet is full of rumors. It's crazy. I mean, it is unbelievable. And it gets weaponized on campaigns where, people will set up fake accounts and they'll start spreading rumors on different platforms. Because
it's the internet. Have you been there? I'm just asking. I mean, come on, it's the internet.
Yeah. But you know what? The Republican caucus needs a spine. Let's be clear. We need more people in DC with the strength to push back. And these caucuses, they help to provide some of that structure, and I think they serve an important purpose. And the Freedom Caucus knows where I'm at. I've met with them. We've had conversations, and we continue to. So, you have to be invited to join that caucus. You can't voluntarily just walk in and say, "Hey, I'm joining your caucus." They have to ask you to join. But they've supported me. I love those guys. I support them, and I hope to get down there and make sure that I'm part of the solution to the problems we've been talking about.
Yeah. Nick Begich is our guest here as we go through here. Let me see. Yeah, those endorsements matter, unlike the NRA endorsements. Oh man, that still stings. That still stings. I don't know what's going to happen out of there. Kyle Johansson, you're right. Ronald Reagan would be forced out of the current Republican Party in a half a second. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the parties, both the Democrat and the Republicans, they've moved away from where the core of the core beliefs are. And it's like the Republicans all of a sudden have become the party of big government, intervening in your lives on certain things. And the Democrats have become the party of, more socialist kind of progressive values, communistic values almost in some ways. And there's a lot of people in both the Republican and Democratic Party who are looking around going, What happened? Where'd my party go? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of big government Republicans out there, and they have been a part of the national deficit becoming $2 trillion. They have been a part of the national debt getting to 35 trillion and growing. Um, we need small government representatives, people who are serious about cutting the sucker and getting this thing
Yeah.
back to a manageable size. And if we don't do it, inflation's not going to go away. It's going to get worse.
We got to wrap. We're going to jump back into it here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Nick Begich is our guest. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Here we go. All right, we're continuing now. Nick Begich is our guest, candidate for Congress. And so this final segment, we've kind of talked about some of the differences and everything else. We obviously are encouraging everybody to get out and vote tomorrow, because tomorrow is the final day to pick Nick and do all that kind of stuff. So final thoughts here, Nick, as we get ready to go. We've got one final segment. What's your exhortation? I mean, you talked a little bit about it in the last segment where you said, if you're going to go out and vote, just spend a few minutes and text message to a bunch of your closest friends and acquaintances and saying, hey, don't forget tomorrow is the primary and I'm voting for Nick and here's why. That's all you got to do. Just send a text message to your friends and your relations and folks who are your close people on your phone, and just say, "Oh, by the way, don't forget tomorrow is the primary election. You got until whatever, and I'm voting for Nick, and here's why it matters." That's all. That's one text message.
It's very simple. It's literally just copy paste. You can do probably 100 contacts in your phone in 10 minutes, and you wouldn't believe what an important difference that can make in an election like this. So if you're passionate, if you're going to the polls, if you're taking the time to go to the polls, it's going to take you, a little bit of time to get down there and vote. Just spend the extra 10 minutes to do this. You'll make a big difference, and it will matter. Look, at the end of the day, this is your country. It's your state. It belongs to you. You're not the property of the U.S. government. Your property is not the property of the U.S. government. But the left wants you to believe that it is. The left wants you to believe that you belong to them, but that's just not true. We have a process in this country. We have elections in this country, and we get to choose who our representatives are going to be in DC. Who's going to represent you next year in the Congress? Well, this is an opportunity for you to help make that decision, and I hope that you will. I have worked hard all over the state. I've been on this show, I don't even know how, dozens of times, and other candidates have been asked, hey, would you like to come on the show? They have not. Why haven't they? What are they afraid of talking about? What are they afraid of being asked? I'm not afraid of being asked anything. If you're going to be in the halls of Congress, you're going to get a mic put in your face, and people are going to start asking you questions, and you better have an answer, because that's an opportunity to talk about Alaska, to talk about what needs to be fixed in our nation. I want to be that voice for you. Alaska's got an exciting story. That's why we live here. That's why the people who came before us came here, right? It's an exciting place with incredible opportunities, not just for us, but for the entire country. Resources in abundance. We're a resource state. But let me tell you something. If the left has their way, they'll keep shutting us down. They'll keep turning us off, and eventually attempt to turn us blue. We need to put a stop to that. We have generational opportunities in front of us, not just for us, for our kids, for our grandkids, and beyond. If we can open up this responsible resource jurisdiction again, we need someone down in DC that's not afraid to answer the tough questions, not afraid to ask the tough questions in committees, not afraid to tell Alaska's story. And I'm not. I will be out there every single day like a broken record, talking to anyone who will listen and people who don't want to listen about why Alaska is important.
I think that's the key, because I think that's one of the reasons why, we've seen such a push behind your opponent is because they understand that Nickel, you're going to go down there and make a mess. You're going to go down there and be noisy, right? You're going to go down there and be the thorn in somebody's side, and the powers that be on the Republican side are like, oh no, we can't. We've got to have somebody who we can, we've got the strings on. We got somebody that will say yes to whatever we say yes to. And that's the thing. You're not a yes man. You're going to go down there and make waves. I mean, that's why you're talking to the Freedom Caucus and Mike Lee and all these other guys, because they are the thorns in the side of the Congress. They're the ones that are trying to remind them of their real obligation and their duties, and the fact that it is the people's house and they're supposed to be representing the people, not the parties.
That's right. This is the people's house. It's why, and it's the most responsive portion of our federal government. Because it's every 2 years. You have the opportunity every 2 years to turn the people over, right? This is the chance. This is our chance to get a voice for Alaska again. Whether you loved Don Young, whether you had mixed emotions, or whether you didn't like Don Young. I think what everyone agrees, from the right to the left and everybody in between, the guy made noise. He went down to D.C. and he shook it up. Part of the reason why people had heartburn over him was because he was willing to say things that stopped people in their tracks, opened their eyes wide, and said, "What is he talking about?"
Right.
Well, he had to do that. You got to understand, he had to do that because it's the only way that one person out of 435 can get the attention of the nation and the rest of the Congress. Who in this race is going to do that? Who in this race is going to yell loud enough to get people's attention? I will. You put me down there,
yeah,
I will. And when you talk about a contrast between me and other candidates that you may be thinking about, that's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah, I kind of see a picture of Don Young and his, blustering and his no holds barred kind of non-politically correct way, and then I see a Nancy, and I'm like, oh, that's just you can't do that. Whereas you've gone down there and you've already ruffled the feathers just in running for office. I think that's what's got. I mean, you're not even there and you're ruffling feathers. That says a lot to me personally.
Well, look, I've told people, and I've said it today on the program, if you want someone to go down there and push buttons and just disappear into the woodwork, don't vote for me, please, because I'm not going to be that guy. There's big ideas, and Alaska has been shaped by big ideas. The most important things in Alaska are the biggest things in Alaska, right? When you think about a state of Alaska without a Trans-Alaska pipeline, that was one of the largest engineering projects that man had ever attempted up until that time. And people said it couldn't be done. But imagine a state without it. Our tax burden would probably be the highest in the country. There'd be no PFD. Our state would probably have half the population. And if you think we're federally dependent now, imagine what it would be without all that resource. We need those resources, but to get them, we need big projects and big thinkers. People who are like a Wally Hickel, who's not afraid to put some wild ideas down on the table to get a conversation started. That's what you got to have. And you got to have the energy to sell it too. Because those big ideas, you can't just put them on the table in a white paper and expect it to get passed out of the Congress. That's not how this works. You got to be on the news networks. You got to be beating drums. You got to be twisting arms behind the scenes. You got to do all those things all the time as the one person from Alaska to even have a chance to get that stuff done. That's what I want to do. Again, the nation needs fighters and Alaska needs a fighter. And I can tell you right now, Mary Peltola is not that fighter. She can't figure out whether she's showing up to vote, whether she's yes, no, or present, whether she should be in state, whether she should be fishing instead of voting. She doesn't know whether she's coming or going, and she doesn't have any big ideas for the state. And I hope that we agree she needs to be replaced in November. But how she gets replaced and who replaces her is important too, because in Alaska we tend to reelect people, and once she gets replaced, that's going to be your member for the next X number of years potentially. And
right.
This is the opportunity. If we pick the wrong person to put in that job, well, it could be a decade lost for Alaska, and I don't know that we have a decade to lose.
No, I mean, that's the consideration in right now, especially you and I have talked a lot about math and arithmetic, and the Congress just seems to kind of try and ignore that along with the loss of gravity or something. But I mean, this is where we're at. We've got a short window of time to try and fix this. And we're reaching that go, no go point of we reach, beyond the point of no return kind of thing. We've got to do something about it. So even 4 or 5 years lost at this point could be a problem. We've got to have people who are willing to ask the hard questions about how do we continue to spend more than we take in and exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've said, many people have said, look, you can't continue to do it. Well, you can continue to spend money like this, but what you will also continue to see is inflation rise and rise and rise. And, a lot of people don't parse the data that, it's kind of masked information when the media says, hey, inflation's coming down. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean prices are coming down. That means the rate of price increases is decreasing. The prices we have right now, we're stuck with. Unless we have deflation, we're stuck with this. And this is the policies of the government. The left wants to blame the businesses, the private sector, saying, "Oh, it's their fault." It is certainly not. It is a federal government that has decided the answer for paying the bills is printing dollars off the printing press.
Yeah. No, I mean, we saw the numbers come through the Pew. I posted it up on my Facebook page here last week. The numbers from Pew are saying, well, while inflation numbers are down, meaning again, the increase, is it really down? First of all, because they jigger those numbers. But secondly, the overall cost of things still up about 30% in 4 years. 30% of consumables in 4 years. What's it going to be like in another 4 years or another 8 years?
It can't. Here's one of the big problems. People are actually out there, and you may be listening. This may be you, and if it is, I'm very sorry. But people are out there putting groceries on credit cards, putting rent on credit cards because it's that tight. They're getting a second job. Some people I've actually met have a third job. This is unsustainable. There's only so many hours in a week you can work, and you got to eat. You got to live somewhere, and we've got nuts in Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, who are out there suggesting that they're presenting actual communist plans. Price controls lead to shortages. It's economics 101. You see it in high school level economics. They'll tell you that. And these guys are seriously proposing price controls. Folks, we have a very different view on the right side of the aisle than the left does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this election matters. Truly, you hear it all the time, but this is really true. Okay, 2024 matters more than any other election in your lifetime. And I hope that you'll vote. Encourage your friends, encourage your colleagues to get out and vote tomorrow or today early. This state belongs to you.
Nick Begich, candidate for US Congress. Appreciate you coming on board. I picked Nick. That's all I could say at this point. You guys got to make your own choice. Nick, good luck. We'll talk to you again here in the near future. Hopefully we have good news on Wednesday, and we'll find out more. All right, folks, tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story, The Michael Duke Show continues. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, Nick, final bite at the apple. And no, I think Jeannie was saying, what did Jeannie say? No, don't group text. Your friends will hate you. No, she's not saying, don't do a group text. Your friends will hate you. No, he's not saying, he's saying copy and paste. Don't send a group text. You're right. I will delete you off my contacts if you group text. But
group text, when they get more than 5 on a group text, then you're really in trouble.
Man.
I get my number. Sometimes I end up on a 20, 30, or I guess 20 person is the max, but I end up on a 20 person group text, and it's just, oh gosh.
Yeah, who's talking? Yeah. I don't know half these people. I don't recognize these phone numbers. No, he's saying write up a little blurb, copy it, and then text it individually to 100 of your closest friends. I just you want to get unelected, Nick? Just go ahead and do a group text. You won't win a thing. Yeah. All right, Nick, your final thoughts here, my friend. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm hoping that people out there as well. I mean, you got a lot of, that grassroots support, that ground level support from all the districts and people and individuals. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Nancy has kind of been missing from the whole situation, which I think is good for you. But tomorrow is the day. We got to get out there and put our money where our mouth is, put the rubber, where the rubber meets the road, whatever metaphor you want to use. We gotta be heard.
We got to be heard, and that's that's the thing. I mean, it's Ben Franklin who said, "It's a republic if we can keep it." And what did he mean by that? Well, what he meant was that in a republic, you got to be active, you got to be informed, you got to be engaged, and you got to make sure the people around you are too. And if we lose that, if we allow our minds to be hijacked by the ads, by the push polls, by the focus groups, well, that's just another form of control. And there's a whole science to it. I can tell you, if you're curious, there's an entire science to how politics is operated and run behind the scenes. And the science is intended, the intent of that science is to manipulate the public and the public perception of who they should vote for or not for, right? And the people who are controlling those messages and who fund those efforts and the campaigns, well, they have their own interests. Why would someone drop, $50 million on a race? It's not just, and usually it's not out of the goodness of their heart, right?
Right.
They've got an agenda. They've got a plan. If you think about yourself, if you had $50 million, would you take 10 of it and spend it in politics? And if you did, what would you want? You'd want people that are going to follow whatever it is you want them to do. So when this money flows in, you got to recognize it's there for a reason. And there's a reason why it's not flowing in from me from DC. There's also a reason it's flowing in to this campaign from Alaskans. I have raised 6 times the amount of money from Alaskans that my nearest Republican competitor has. But you'd never know it by watching the ads.
Right. No, the ads are like all the time. Well, I'm hoping, Nick, that that my prediction comes true. I predict you're going to come out on top on this deal, but that doesn't mean that people could just stay home and don't count. I've been wrong before. Don't count on my predictions. Go out there and let your voice be heard. Grab somebody else, bring them with you. I'm beating all my kids tomorrow to get them out there to go over and vote for Nick. And so we'll get at least 5 votes for you here tomorrow, Nick. But it's a tough time, but now's the time to get it done. Final word, Nick, right now.
Well, again, tell others. I was at the fair yesterday, right? And I was there for hours and hours, and I was there this weekend for on Saturday for hours and hours. And I talked to people. I would say about half the folks out there, they're very interested in making sure we replace Peltola. They don't know that there's an election tomorrow. And so you will make a difference when you go out there and you talk to your friends and family and just let them know, hey, here's who I'm supporting and here's why. At the end of the day, I live in Alaska just like everybody else because I believe in the potential of this state. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. Because you believe that there's something unique and special about the last frontier. People have come north to the future. Let's make sure that they have a future when they get here. Let's make sure that we have a future while we're here. And the future of Alaska is going to be resources or it's not, right? And if it's not, many of us are going to have to leave. A lot of Alaskans are going to have to go. I talk to people all over the state, parents and grandparents who are sad because their kids or their grandkids have left to pursue other opportunities because they don't see a future for themselves in our state. We're responsible to that generation. That's our responsibility to make sure that they have a chance to make it here. If we fall down on that job, well, we failed. And I don't want to see us fail. I want to see us succeed. I want to see us wildly succeed.
Yeah.
But that's up to us. That's up to us.
Nick Begich, candidate for US Congress. Thank you, my friend. As always, good luck tomorrow. Where are you going to be tomorrow? You going to be waving signs or?
We're going to be waving signs. We'll be in Anchorage waving signs. We'll hopefully have some people out in the valley, maybe up in Fairbanks waving signs. I've heard folks in the Kenai might be waving signs. Look, we're grassroots, so we're going to be all over the place. But I hope you're at the polls. So if you want, come out. If you're in the valley, if you're in Wasilla Palmer area, we're going to be at the Chop House, 7:30 to 10, just to celebrate and have a little election watch party and just thank all the volunteers because there's been so many that have made this possible. So if you have time and you're in the area, come by. We'd love to see you, and I'd love to shake your hand and thank you for all that you do.
Chop House, Wasilla, tomorrow night, 7 to 10. All right, Nick, thank you, my friend. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for coming on board. All right, folks, that does it for us today. We are out of time. I'm going to go take a nap because I'm off today, right? I only came in for Nick and for, Nancy. I thought Nancy and Nick, but I wasn't going to shortchange Nick when she couldn't be here. He's going to get that final bite at the apple. But now I'm going to go take a nap. So that's my job. My job today is to take a nap. All right, my friends, thank you for coming on board. We will see you tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.